Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about our top 12 rookie dynasty wide receivers before the draft. For a week away, Joe. I know I'm excited, but before that, we're going to rank those wide receivers.
Hike!
So, Joe, why don't you start us off? We're looking at Tier 5. Who do you got?
All right, in Tier 5, at number 12, I've got Jalen Polk. At 11, I've got Jermaine Burton. And at number 10, I've got Xavier Worthy.
Wow, Joe, you really spruced it up since the last time we did this. For me, at number 12, I've got Troy Franklin, and then number 11, Malachi Corley. So, Joe, why don't you talk to me a little bit about your picks? You got Jalen Polk, who I don't believe was in your top even 24 last time, if I don't remember. And definitely Jermaine Burton was a new addition. And then Worthy took a drop.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously, with new information, Steve, and everyone buzzing about this draft, I know I'm excited for it on Thursday here. Can't wait to see what happens. But, I feel like Jalen Polk is one of the guys who's getting a little more recognition. But, I feel like he kind of gets overlooked in that Washington offense. Obviously, he had Jalen McMillan and even, Rome Odunze in that team. And, he's 6'1", 203. He had a 25% dominator rating and, over 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns as a senior last year. He even had 5.2 yards after the catch per reception in his final season. And I like his ability to go ahead and get those, contested catches in the 50-50 balls. So those are just some of the reasons, I decided to put him in there at 12. But Jermaine Burton, I watching some people looking at his tape, I feel like I had to, include him in here just because he's electric. He's down the field. If it wasn't for the off the field concerns, possibly, and I know that could negatively affect his draft stock. Some of the issues that he had, after the games with the fans and everything like that. But I feel like if it wasn't for those negatives from what he does on the field and watching the tape, especially that, that catch that he had in that wild game last year as well was very impressive. I feel like his on the field stuff makes him deserving to be on the top 12, but it's the off the field stuff that's going to get these NFL teams concerned. And if it wasn't for that, I feel like he'd be potentially like a top 5 wide receiver, getting more hyped.
And then you had Worthy took a dive.
Yeah, just the more I was thinking about Xavier Worthy, like I get that he's, got the speed potential. But you know how I feel. It's just I'm a little worried about his size and his ability to beat press coverage. Once these corners are going to be able to get their hands on him, jam him at the line of scrimmage. And honestly, like his most impressive year was the freshman year that he had, and where he racked up 981 yards and 12 scores. But outside of that, I feel like that was his best year, and he just hadn't reached that potential in the other year. So I'm kind of concerned about that. As far as I like to see guys ascending, in their senior year heading into the draft, not necessarily, dominating in your freshman year and then just kind of being, showing that he had decent stats. Obviously, he had the big 40 time at the combine. I mean, take that with you, which we've seen guys absolutely blazing speed at the combine and just not turn out in the NFL. So I feel like he's the ultimate like boomer bust play and boomer bust pick in the draft. So that's why I got him lower in my tier 5.
I mean, that checks out for you. I mean, you don't care about the underwear Olympics over at the at the combine. Yeah. So that doesn't change your mindset at all.
Correct.
Interesting. I mean, you don't care about Tank Dell's size, but you care about Xavier Worthy's size.
Yeah, and part of that is just being able to see Tank Dell play and excel at the NFL level. And if Xavier goes out there and proves me wrong, I can adjust my rankings and I'll give him what he's due. But just looking at these guys from purely prospects, and not knowing what they're going to do at the NFL level, I got him lower in my tier 5 here.
Fair enough, Joe. For me, with number 12 at Troy Franklin, I think I was too hard on this guy. And a lot of my reasoning
on this guy, just because he had a down combine in your eyes,
he did, and that's very much the reason why I put a lot of stock in that.
Even though, did you know he ran the fastest gauntlet time?
I thought that was Keon Coleman. I think you got to check the facts. I think you're wrong about
Keon
that.
Coleman. My
Yeah,
bad,
you,
Steve.
you,
I'll save
I
that
think
for later.
you're so quick to jump at me that you were wrong about that. But anywho, here's the thing. My concern with Franklin is he's a thin-railed guy, and he predominantly has done well with the deep ball. He can do other things. I'm not saying he can't just do deep ball, but I feel like in the NFL, he's going to fit that role. So depending on where he goes, I think it could really determine how successful he is in the NFL. Which, I mean, all these players, you could say that, but some of them I think are landing spot proof. So for me, when it comes to Franklin, I was hard on him because of what happened with the combine. I still think he was a very productive receiver at Oregon. And I felt like he was worthy of being in the top 12.
Oh,
You probably have him a lot higher, if I have to guess.
Yeah, he's definitely worthy of being in the top 12 for sure.
Yeah. Well, worthy. I think just some other people that are worthy before him. But then number 11 is Malachi Corley. I don't know if you'll have him in the top 12. This is a guy I pound the table for. He's a yak monster. He was super productive in Western Kentucky. I would think if he's not in your top 12, I think you got to relook at that because he loves contact. And I know how much you love a receiver who's not afraid of contact. You think that they're, soft if they run out of bounds, come on, hit. Okay, well, this guy is not that. So to me, I mean, he embraces contact. I know he's at a smaller school, Western Kentucky. That could hurt his draft stock. I think he's going to be in the second or third round. But I really like this guy, Joe. I think he could have a really good career.
Yeah, I don't have him in my top 12, but I strongly considered it. If I would have to put him at, I think he just missed it. I would have him probably at 13 or 14. Like you said, he is the, yak king, and I do, appreciate and like the way he plays. But I'll be curious to see like where his landing spot is, and that could, move him up the rankings.
So let's head over to tier 4. Who do you got there?
All right. In tier 4 at number 9, I've got Roman Wilson. And at number 8, I've got Keon Coleman.
All right. So for number 10, I've got Roman Wilson. And number 9, Ricky Pearsall. So we both have Roman Wilson in this tier, a guy who, in my view, just because of the offense, wasn't heavily utilized. But you can see that this guy is able to create separation. We saw what he was able to do at the Senior Bowl, which I think you put a little more stock in, just how well he performed in the drills. He's a guy, in my view, that he projects to be a better, I mean, not to say he wasn't good in Michigan, just a more productive player in the NFL.
Yeah, I think he's got all the ability, and the tools, especially with his route running, and I think he's got the speed as well to perform at the NFL level. Like you said, Michigan offense just didn't pass a whole lot, but even with the limited opportunities that he did have, he was able to get 2.68 yards per route run, and then also had a 38% dominator as a senior last year as well.
Very high. That's very high.
So I mean, you see some good metrics in the limited role, and then if that expands, I think he hasn't shown what his full potential is yet.
I think now let me ask you this. Do you think it's possible he sneaks into the first round?
I think it could be possible, but I don't expect him to sneak into the first round.
I don't either, but I wouldn't be shocked.
Right. Like, I mean, like, I wouldn't be shocked. I think probably at the end of the draft, the Chiefs are going to go receiver. I don't think anybody really knows which one. And depending on who's on the board, like, I could see them easily taking a guy like Roman Wilson, just with his elite route running and getting open. But I think it's more likely he goes, in the second round.
Now, you've got Keon Coleman, which I do not have in the top 12, and I have Ricky Pearsall, and I'm pretty sure you don't have him in your top 12.
Correct. I don't have Ricky Pearsall.
So what was your reasoning by Keon Coleman?
Well, one of the talking points, as I mentioned earlier, you want to knock his speed all the time, and his, most people say his unimpressive 40 time, but he did reach the fastest speed in the gauntlet drill at 20.36 miles per hour. Despite running the slowest 40 time. I don't know what you think about that, Steve, but I just like the way, Coleman plays. He had averaged 6.3 yards after catch per catch as well. I mean, he's a bigger guy at 6'3", 213 pounds. I just like his ability to go up and get those contested catches with that, use that big frame. And I think, that plays at the NFL level.
I think for me, in general, I try to avoid players that are more contested catch players who have a hard time separating. That concerns me. Now, if you're a DK Metcalf type, which I'll talk about later, a guy who I think was similar to him, his build, that's a different story. But, time and time again, we've seen guys who are contested catch players who have not done well in the NFL. This is the NFL. You've got a much better defense. You've got stronger corners, just a stronger secondary in general. They're going to stick to them like glue. So to me, that makes me concerned. Unless they have really, really good hands, a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, right? He's been able to be so successful because of how good he is as a hands catcher.
Yeah, it's interesting. One other thing about Coleman, like he ran the slowest 40 time, but yet he actually returned punts last year, and he had the third most return yards in the country from the punt returner position. So I don't know if the NFL will choose to put him there, but
I don't think so. I don't see it, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't see it translating, but I'm almost wondering if he just plays faster than what he ran at the 40. And
it's possible.
It's hard to account for that.
For me, when it comes to Ricky Pearsall, this guy's got great rounding, but also got great hands. I mean, to me, you saw, obviously you have the highlight reel one-handed catch that he had, but you see, to me, he is a guy in Florida who really didn't have that great of an opportunity he wasn't a part of an Ohio State offense or one of these juggernaut offenses. Florida has been an up and down program of late. So to me, I think that he's a guy I'm really interested in because I think he's in that new generation of the NFL. That's why I put Roman Wilson and Ricky Pearsall in the same category, because I kind of see them having similar roles in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
How about heading over to Tier 3, Joe? Who do you got?
All right, in Tier 3 at 7, I've got Ladd McConkey, and at 6, I've got Troy Franklin.
Interesting. All right, it's number 8. I've got Adonai Mitchell, and in 7, Xavier Legette. I'm guessing you don't have Legette in your top 12.
That is correct.
Okay, all right. So for me, this guy I find him very exciting. We've seen players like A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf do really well coming into the NFL. These guys, you got to remember, Metcalf and A.J. Brown were both drafted in the second round. These guys were not, that type of profile of receiver was not drafted in the first round. I think it could happen again for Legette. But the Gamecocks were a really bad team. But for him to be as productive as he was, I think is a testament to his playing style. So I'm really excited for what he can bring to the NFL. He's your true outside receiver. He's not. I don't see him playing in the slot. I don't see him really playing in motion. But we've seen guys that have a similar build as him do really, really well. And then for me, when it comes to Adonai Mitchell, I'm lower on him than most.
I don't get it, man.
Joe, he had one good year. You talk about wanting to have consistency and having multiple years to prove it. He does not have that. He gives up on plays. I know you don't want to hear about it with the whole diabetes thing, but it checks out. If he's temperamental and coaches can't control him and he's giving up on plays, you talk about how receivers are divas. I don't want receivers are a diva. I don't want this guy. I'm not calling you out at night. I don't know you, but I'm just saying what it seems to be is we could be talking about a type of player that could cause some locker room type of frustrations, right? He looks very talented, but I am avoiding that because I think time and time again we've seen that not go so well. So it concerns me.
Fair enough. Yeah, those are potential concerns, but I just think with his talent and everything like that, I think if NFL team can harness him and bring him in and not let those things affect him and get him involved in playing, I think he's deserving to be a lot higher. McConkey's a great route runner. He primarily played on the outside, has really good route running, but I think for the most part, I'll be interested. I think for the most part, the NFL teams are really going to look at him to be a slot guy. And I
So is it
think
more
that,
just you don't know if he'll translate to that because you've had him a lot higher in the past?
yeah, I think that's part of my concern is if like he can be that true guy on the outside in the NFL. I think most teams are looking at him and, just kind of as a slot receiver with his great route running ability, which he definitely has. I just don't know if his upside is as high as some of these other guys, in the that we're talking about in the top 12 here.
And
But
then
as
Troy
far as
Franklin.
as far as Troy Franklin, Steve, I know uh, for whatever reason you don't like Troy Franklin,
I think
but
the reason why you may like him is because your future quarterback for the Denver Broncos was throwing him the ball.
who's that?
Bo Nix.
Oh, I don't know if he's the future or not, but we'll see. But Lancer line on the NFL.com, Steve, comparing him to Chris Olave. You know how I feel about Chris Olave. 6'2", 176 pounds. And, he's a burner. He got 4.41 at the combine. He
You don't
was,
care about that.
well, I mean, I don't necessarily like. That's one of the main reasons to like Xavier Worthy, just because he had blazing speed. Now, being able to run fast at the 40 is something to consider, but it's not the end all be all. And I feel like that's the way some people look at it. But I mean, in 2023, he had 1,383 yards and 14 touchdowns with a 31% dominator ranking, as well as, averaging 3.3 yards per route run and even 2.9 yards per pass attempt as well. So a lot of people say those stats are similar to a Brian Thomas, who a lot of people have higher.
All right, Joe, what do you got in tier 2?
So in tier 2, at number 5, speaking of the guy, I've got Adonai Mitchell. And at number 4, I've got Brian Thomas Jr.
All right, number 6, I got Lab McConkey, 5, Xavier Worthy, and 4, Brian Thomas Jr. So we'll talk about Brian Thomas because we both have him. There are some underlying metrics if you are on the Twitter space that would make you concerned about Brian Thomas. I would say that I have maybe trying to look for the word. I think I've taken a step back. Maybe I'm not as excited about him. However, because he only had the 1 year, but it was a really, really good year. And I love how he's able to run secondary routes. I mean, to me, that's very helpful in today's NFL. You can't just, run your primary route and then just stand there. So to me, I think that he's the type of player, yes, he's a 1-year wonder, but I think he can translate further. He's got the height. He's got the speed. I mean, he's a very enticing prospect.
Yeah, he definitely is. I mean, at 6'3", 209 pounds, running a 4.3, 340. That definitely is a, exciting profile to start with. And then, his secondary routes could become important if he, in fact, goes to the Buffalo Bills, Steve, with Josh Allen liking to run around.
That would be really interesting if he did, and what that would mean for rookie drafts. Your 8 and 9 picks are going to be a lot more valuable in the first round. But
Yeah.
I mean, I disagree with you on Worthy. I think Worthy is able to succeed now in today's NFL than what it would have been 10, 15 years ago. I think that just the composition of wide receivers has dramatically changed. I mean, look at a guy like Tyreek Hill. Who would have thought a guy like him, would be able to be as successful as I know he's got blazing speed. And I'm not saying that Xavier Worthy is him.
I mean, have you seen Tyreek Hill's legs? I mean, he's got.
Oh, I get that, but I'm just saying you didn't see that 10, 15 years ago, in my view. You know what I mean? I mean, Steve Smith was maybe the anomaly of that. And at that point, it was like, wow, Steve Smith is like the only guy who could do this. So to me, I think that he was very productive. It's not just his 40 time. I know you want to mention that his best year was his freshman year, but he did good throughout the 3 years. He was consistent. There was not this huge fall off. So I think depending on the team that he goes to, I think he could be used pretty well. So I personally, he has more evidence based on what he did in college than his counterpart, Adonai Mitchell. Now, you are just excited about the potential with him.
Well, as far as Mitchell goes, I mean, he had 55 receptions for 845 yards, 11 touchdowns, while earning a 32% dominator, which is pretty good, Steve. And I think, yeah, he's got some red flags, but he had 3.2 yards after the catch. And did you know, so there's a guy on Twitter, Corey Bushlin. I think his stats would have been better if he was getting more catchable targets. He had one of the lowest passes that were deemed catchable rates amongst the top 20 to 24 wide receivers at just 66.67%. Compared to even his counterpart Xavier Worthy from the same quarterback, interesting enough, had 70%.
That is an interesting stat you pulled out of your hat there, Joe. Lastly, for me, McConkey, I think he's deserving in tier 2. I know he's a projection, but again, in today's NFL, with this guy's route running, I think he's very moldable in what teams want. And you're seeing, again, I don't want to compare him just because, they're both white guys, but Cooper Kupp, right? Cooper Kupp, he's dominated in that area of the field. So you're starting to see more and more players do that, and I think McConkey could very well succeed.
So you picture him as a true outside receiver, not just a slot guy.
I think he could be used in both. I don't think he has to be one or the other. I think NFL teams can move him around. I don't think they're going to be like, you can only play on the inside.
Yeah, fair enough. I think it'll depend on, if he gets, what offensive coach he gets to work with. But, I mean, if he goes to the Chiefs, I mean, I think I'd move him up closer to where you have him compared to where I have him currently.
All right, Joe, let's head over to tier 1. Who do you got?
All right, in tier 1 at number 3, I've got Rome Odunze, number 2, Malik Neighbors, and number 1, Marvin Harrison Jr.
Same for me, Joe. 3 Rome Odunze, 2 Malik Neighbors, 1 Marvin Harrison Jr. A little surprised, though. Yeah, it's chalk, but you had Odunze ahead of Neighbors the last time, so something changed.
Yeah, it's like splitting hairs with these guys, I feel like. But I think I just give Odunze the edge just for that ability that's going to have, we talk about Yak Kings and whatever. I mean, what he's going to be able to do after the catch. And just running through tacklers and making those big plays and using his speed to create the big plays. I think that's just what kind of pushed him over the top for me.
I maybe you think I'm nuts. I've always said that Neighbors ahead of Marvin Harrison is not the craziest, in my view. I think those two are closer than Neighbors and Odunze, in my view, if you're going to split hairs.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, no NFL team's going to go wrong with either of these 3 guys. That's why I have them in tier 1. But yeah, I think, Marvin Harrison Jr., he just the plays he's able to make, and he's just a bigger type of receiver than, I think it's going to be hard not to put him on number 1.
Yeah, all 3 of them are really good. I mean, this is the type of draft class that you salivate over when you've got wide receivers in it, because this, we just talked about 12 guys, but there were probably even more, at least 5, 6, 7 we probably could have talked about.
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, we didn't even have the same guys, in the top 12, so there's definitely plenty more. This is a really deep wide receiver class. And the other thing with Marvin Harrison Jr. that impressed me was, to do what he did with C.J. Stroud is one thing, but then to go and do what he did last year with Kyle McCord, and I think he even had potentially better stats with McCord last year, surprisingly enough, than C.J. Stroud. And then, Kyle McCord's not even with Ohio State anymore. He just transferred over to Syracuse. So
that is really impressive because, you want to see, because depending on the quarterback, how does he play? We know how good Stroud is. McCord's not even probably going to get close to that level from what we anticipate. So I agree. I mean, again, you can't go wrong with any 3 of these guys. They're all great.
Correct.
So that does it for our top 12 Dynasty rookie wide receiver rankings pre-draft. If you hadn't had a chance yet, go ahead and check our other episodes. We talked about quarterbacks, running backs, and IDP. And we're going to be talking about the NFL draft after it's all said and done and what our reactions are. You're not going to want to miss that. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.